The last Christmas at O'Malley's amber glow of the candle flickered between them, casting dancing shadows across the polished wooden table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of O'Malley's restaurant, downtown Chicago sparkled with premature Christmas lights, though Thanksgiving had barely passed. The festive decorations seemed to mock the heaviness that hung in the air. Emma sat perfectly still, her small hands folded in her lap, her blonde curls catching the warm light. At 6 years old, she possessed an unsettling composure for someone so young, the kind of maturity that comes only from understanding too much, too soon. Her blue dress, carefully chosen by her grandmother that morning, made her look like a tiny adult playing dress-up. But this wasn't play. This was goodbye. Across from her, Michael Brennan leaned forward, his gray dress shirt crisp despite the emotional weight he carried. At 34, he'd imagined this moment countless times over the past 3 months, rehearsing words that might make sense of the senseless. But now, faced with his daughter's searching eyes, every prepared sentence evaporated like morning mist. Behind them, Michael's ex-wife Rebecca stood with her arms crossed, watching from a distance. She'd agreed to give them this time alone, 30 minutes in a public place where emotions might stay contained, where the scene couldn't escalate into something Emma would carry forever. The divorce had been finalized 8 weeks ago, but this meeting had nothing to do with that. This was about something far more permanent. "Daddy," Emma finally spoke, her voice small but steady, "Grandma says you're going somewhere far away." Michael's jaw tightened. He'd specifically asked his mother not to tell her anything, wanting to explain it himself, in his own way. But Margaret Brennan, in her grief and fear of losing her only son, had apparently needed someone to confide in. That someone had been a 6-year-old child. That's kind of true, sweetheart," Michael began, his voice cracking on the last word. He cleared his throat, trying again. "Remember how I told you about my job? How sometimes engineers have to go to different places to build important things?" Emma nodded slowly, but her eyes, so like his own, held a knowledge that suggested she knew this wasn't just about engineering. The waitress approached, her cheerful demeanor dimming as she sensed the atmosphere. "Can I get you folks anything?" "Just water, please," Michael said quickly. "And maybe some apple juice for the princess here." "I'm not a princess anymore," Emma said quietly after the waitress left. "Princesses live with their daddies." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He reached across the table, taking her tiny hand in his much larger one. "Hey, no, you'll always be my princess. Always. Nothing can change that." "Then why are you leaving?" It was the question he'd been dreading. How do you explain to a child that sometimes life forces impossible choices? That the experimental treatment available only at a facility in Switzerland represented his last chance? That the aggressive brain tumor growing behind his left temple gave him perhaps 6 months without intervention, and maybe 2 years with it? The diagnosis had come 4 months ago, right in the middle of the custody battle. He'd told Rebecca immediately, and she'd done something he never expected. She'd softened. The anger over his affair, over the lies, over the broken promises, all of it had taken a backseat to the reality that Emma might lose her father before she turned 7. They'd agreed together that Emma shouldn't know the full truth. What was the point of burdening a child with that knowledge? Better to let her think he was going away for work. Better to let her be angry at his absence than terrified of his death. But sitting here now, looking into those knowing eyes, Michael wondered if they'd made the wrong choice. "I'm going because there's important work I need to do," he said carefully. "But Emma, I need you to know something. Are you listening?" She nodded, squeezing his hand. I love you more than anything in this whole world. More than the sky, more than the ocean, more than all the stars combined. And no matter where I am, that will never, ever change. Do you understand? Will you come back? The question hung in the air. Through the window, Michael could see couples walking hand in hand, families laughing, children running ahead of their parents with the invincibility of youth. The world continued its rotation, indifferent to the small tragedy unfolding at table 12. I'm going to try my hardest, he said, and it was the most honest answer he could give. The waitress returned with their drinks. Emma picked up her apple juice but didn't drink it. Instead, she stared at the glass as if it might contain answers. Mommy cries at night, Emma said suddenly. I hear her through the wall. Michael glanced back at Rebecca, who was now sitting at the bar, her back to them. They'd been high school sweethearts, married at 23, parents at 28. She'd stood by him through engineering school, through the lean years when he was starting out, through his father's death from the same kind of tumor he now faced. And he'd repaid her loyalty with betrayal. The affair with his colleague Sarah had been brief, stupid, and ultimately meaningless, but it had been enough. Enough to break Rebecca's trust, enough to end their marriage, enough to complicate everything just as his life became genuinely complicated. Your mom is very strong, Michael said. She's going to take such good care of you. I don't want her to take care of me. I want you. Emma, why does everything have to change? Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. First, you and mommy don't live together anymore. Then you stopped picking me up from school. Now you're going away. Why does everyone always go away? Michael moved around the table, sliding into the booth beside her. He pulled her close, and she buried her face in his chest. He could feel her small body trembling, holding back tears she was too proud or too scared to cry. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, he whispered into her hair. Sometimes life doesn't go the way we planned. But the one thing that never changes is how much I love you. Promise you'll call me every single day, and I'll send you letters, and pictures, and videos. Promise you'll try to come back. His throat constricted. The doctors had been clear about the odds. Even with the treatment, even with everything going perfectly, the chances of him seeing Emma graduate high school were slim. Of walking her down the aisle someday. Nearly impossible. But what he could promise, what he would promise, was that he would fight with everything he had. I promise I will do everything I can to come back to you. She pulled away, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Daddy, are you sick? There it was. The question underneath all the others. Despite their efforts to shield her, some part of Emma had understood. Children always do. Michael looked over at Rebecca, who had turned on her barstool, watching them. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they had an entire conversation without words. Should we tell her? Can we keep lying? What's the right thing to do? Rebecca gave a slight nod, then looked away. Yeah, baby, Michael said softly. I'm sick. That's why I'm going away. To try to get better. Like when I had the flu. A little more serious than the flu, but yes, kind of like that. And the doctors in the other place can make you better. They're going to try. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she said something that nearly broke him completely. I'll be really good while you're gone. I'll do all my homework and eat my vegetables and go to bed on time. And then maybe if I'm really, really good, you'll get better faster. Michael closed his eyes, fighting back tears. This was exactly what they'd hoped to avoid. A child believing she had any control over the uncontrollable, that her behavior could somehow influence his survival. Emma, sweetheart, look at me. He waited until she met his gaze. Whether I get better or not has nothing to do with you being good or bad. You understand. You're perfect exactly as you are. This isn't about you. It's just something that happened to me, and now I have to deal with it. But I can still be good, right? Just in case it helps. He smiled through his pain. You can be as good as you want. But I want you to also be a kid, okay? Run around. Play with your friends. Laugh. Have fun. Don't spend all your time worried about me. That's hard, Daddy. I know. But that's what would make me happiest. Knowing you're living your life. Through the window, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, dusting the Chicago streets with white. Emma watched them, transfixed. Look, Daddy. Snow. First snow of the year, he said. Make a wish. She closed her eyes tightly, her face scrunched in concentration. When she opened them, she looked at him seriously. I can't tell you what I wished for, or it won't come true. That's the rule, he agreed, though he knew exactly what she'd wished for. The same thing he wished for every time he closed his eyes. Their 30 minutes were nearly up. Michael could see Rebecca checking her watch, preparing to collect Emma and return to the new normal of their fractured family. He had a flight to catch in 6 hours, a life to fight for, and a daughter to somehow find a way back to. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small box, wrapped in silver paper with a blue bow. Emma's eyes widened. Can I open it now? I want you to wait until Christmas morning. Can you do that for me? She nodded eagerly, clutching the box to her chest. What Michael didn't tell her was what was inside. A locket containing a picture of the two of them from her 4th birthday party, both of them covered in chocolate cake and laughing. On the back, he'd had engraved, "Forever your daddy, forever my princess." He also didn't tell her that he'd made videos. Dozens of them. One for each birthday until she turned 18. One for her first day of middle school, high school, college. One for her wedding day. One for when she had her first child. All of them prepared by a man who understood he might not be there to witness these moments himself. Rebecca appeared beside the table. Michael, I'm sorry, but we really need to get going. I have to get Emma home for dinner. Emma clutched the present tighter. 5 more minutes. We've had our time, sweetheart, Michael said gently, though every fiber of his being wanted to demand those 5 minutes, and 5 more after that, and 5 more after that, until he'd stored up a lifetime of minutes to sustain him through whatever came next. He walked them to the door, ignoring the curious stares of other diners. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, accumulating on car windshields and streetlights. Emma turned to him one last time. Daddy, what if I forget what you look like? The question gutted him. Then you look at pictures. Are you video call me? Are you close your eyes and remember this moment right here? She threw her arms around his waist, holding on with surprising strength. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Princess. More than you'll ever know. Rebecca gently pried Emma away, her own eyes glistening with tears. Say goodbye, Emma. Not goodbye, Emma said firmly. See you later. Michael smiled through his tears. See you later, baby girl. He watched them walk to Rebecca's car, watched her buckle Emma into her booster seat, watched them drive away into the snowy Chicago evening. He stood there long after the car disappeared, snowflakes melting on his cheeks alongside tears he no longer tried to hide. Inside his pocket, his phone buzzed with a reminder. Flight to Zurich. Check in now. Michael took one last look at O'Malley's restaurant, at the warm lights and happy families inside, at the life he was leaving behind. Then he turned and walked toward the taxi stand, toward the airport, toward Switzerland and the experimental treatment that represented his last hope. In the car seat, clutching her silver-wrapped present, Emma pressed her face against the window, watching the restaurant grow smaller. She didn't know about the videos, didn't know about the letters he'd already written, didn't know that her father had spent the last 3 months preparing for a future he might not see. All she knew was that the snow was falling, Christmas was coming, and her daddy had promised to try to come home. Sometimes, for a 6-year-old girl in a blue dress, that promise had to be enough.